I'm Halen.
And I'm Aydin. Welcome to our Radar Career Review.
We are excited to be here with our brand new superintendent, Dr. Mike Rockwood. He served as Lake Dallas superintendent for 2 years. He led the district to new academic heights, and the high school was named one of the best high schools in the country.
Prior to Lake Dallas ISD, Dr. Rockwood served as the deputy superintendent in one of the state's fastest growing 6A school districts, Lamar CISD. In this role, he was responsible for supporting academic, operational, and financial initiatives that resulted in an A rating from the state.
Dr. Rockwood holds a Bachelor in Arts and Communication from Texas A&M, a Master in Strategic Public Relations from the George Washington University, a Doctor in Education from K-12 Leadership from Baylor University.
Dr. Rockwood has been recently recognized by the National School Public Relations Association as one of 25 2022 National Superintendents to Watch. He is a Dallas Business Journal 40 Under 40 recipient for successful business leadership in the Metroplex, and he is currently a District Leadership Fellow with the Southern Methodist University Institute for Leadership Impact.
Today we'll hear about his pathway to success and what it's like to be a superintendent.
Before we start, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come and let us interview you.
Thank you so much. Obviously, being on campus is my favorite place to be, so looking forward to chatting with both of you today.
Where did you attend middle and high school, and what was your experience like?
Goodness, so it's been a few years since middle school. So I grew up in the Houston area in Katy, and so we called them junior high. So I went to Katy Junior High, and I had a fantastic experience in junior high, middle school. I was actually elected the 8th grade student body class president, and so I played club soccer. I was involved in both speech and debate and theater, so I had a little bit of athletics, extracurricular, and was very involved in the school. So I would just encourage everyone, especially as you enter into middle school, to find something that you enjoy, whether it's broadcasting like this, or sports, or a little bit of both, and then find your niche as you head up to high school.
Can you tell us about your background and how it has prepared you for the role of superintendent?
Yeah, I think when you go through leadership and you have different roles, you're always looking for how those things add up. And I think the things you do well and the struggles that you have all play a part. So I've been in education for 14 years and I've loved every minute of it. I feel like education is a very glass half full industry. And so when you're going to class and you're working with your teachers, they're pouring into you, they want you to be successful. But I've also found that in education, the teachers work together to make each other better. And so I think that really education is about learning and growing. And here in Highland Park ISD, we certainly want to be a learning organization. So all my experiences, this will be my 4th school district total. I previously worked at Sheldon ISD, at Lamar Consolidated ISD, at Lake Dallas ISD, just around the corner, and now in Highland Park, and I'm so excited to be here.
What is the purpose of a superintendent, and what do you do to help the school?
The purpose of the superintendent, that's a great question. So I kind of explain it that the superintendent is the principal of all of the principals. And so I get to work with everyone at the high school, at the middle school, at the intermediate school, and all 5 of our elementary schools, along with everyone in central office and food service and technology. So everybody who works, all 850 employees, they work together, but also you work with a school board. And so that's 7 elected individuals, along with all the parents and all the students in the district. And so a superintendent is really someone who oversees all of the operations of the school system, but ultimately my job is to make sure that you, the students, are successful, that you're learning and growing, and that you enjoy your time on campus.
What motivated you to pursue a career in education, and how did you get started in the field?
So honestly, I think, the one thing I encourage everyone to do is just to lean into what you're interested in. So I didn't grow up wanting to be in education. I grew up with a lot of emphasis on communications, on business, but ultimately, as I spent more and more time around public education, I got interested in what it represents and how, we're creating futures that are yet to be discovered through our students. And so I mentioned the 4 school districts I've been a part of. A lot of my experience has been on the operational side. And so I know here in Highland Park, we've got excellent academic success. We had a big bond issue. We've done some rezoning and redistricting. These are all things that I have experience with over my career. And so when I was the deputy superintendent in Lamar Consolidated, we passed $1.35 billion in bond funds. We redistricted almost every single year. And so we opened up an elementary school every year. So I've had some experience in those areas. But ultimately, I think when you're successful, it's all about working together with everyone in the organization and trying to get from A to Z.
What do you consider to be your greatest accomplishments as an educator so far?
Well, I think that's a great segue. So, when I think about accomplishments in public education, it's not really what did I, Dr. Rockwood, do, but what did we do together? And so when I think about things, it's always about as a team, because my job is to work with all of those different groups that we talked about to be successful. And so certainly, I think you can pick any goal, whether it is trying to have that high academic success with an A rating. In Lake Dallas, we took all of our elementary campuses and raised them to their highest academic achievement ever. We mentioned the bond election or the rezoning or any number of community initiatives, but ultimately it's about working together with students, with parents, with staff members to be successful. So I don't know if I can pick one thing, but I know that every time I've been successful, it hasn't been just me getting things done. It's been working with everyone in the community.
How do you stay up to date with the latest educational research and best practices?
So I've always said that leaders are readers, and so it's not just your textbooks or the things that you work on in class, but I've read a number of books, and I will actually say that's the one thing I encourage all young people and young adults is to keep reading, keep looking for things that expand your mind, where you can learn and grow. And so obviously I've got 3 degrees, but a lot of that you can find out on your own with being inquisitive, being interested in topics. So I read lots of books around public education, a lot of research-based practices, but at the end of the day, I've always found that people over programs are what's important. So we've talked a lot about collaboration, about relationships, and so working with the teachers and staff, being flexible is how we can be successful, but you've got to take the time to read business journals, read books, and keep learning and growing.
How do you approach building relationships with your staff, students, parents, and community members?
Well, I think a lot of it is just like this. I appreciate you all inviting me out here, but you will find me out and about at all of the events, and it won't just be at the football games, although I am excited to attend those, whether it is an athletic event, an extracurricular event. I go out and about on all of the elementary campuses. I'll go to musical performances or open houses. But really, you'll also see me just walking down the hall. And so when I explained a superintendent is kind of like a principal of all the principals, if you see me out and about at the intermediate school, the middle school, the high school, wherever, I encourage you to say hello. I look forward to just stopping and chatting with students, talking to teachers, and being available. But I know that people talk about having an open door policy as a leader. I think that's important. But I also think that management by walking around is important. You've got to actually get up out of your office and go out onto the schools, go out into the community, shake some hands and get to know everyone, because as I've already said 3 or 4 times, it's about working together to be successful.
Can you tell us about the time when you had to make a difficult decision as a superintendent and how you handled it?
Oh goodness, that's a great question. So a difficult decision as a superintendent. Well, I think we talked about leadership a little bit, and when you work with a number of people, the one thing I do know is that you're never going to make every single individual happy with every decision that you make. And if you try to make every individual happy, you will never get a great decision. But I do think it's important to listen to people and not through them, hear everyone, give everybody a chance for feedback, and then make the best decision possible. I think if you're working together, good things happen. And so trying to think of a specific example, I know a couple of years ago when I was a superintendent in Lake Dallas, some students at the high school wanted to move away from the University of North Texas to have graduation, and they wanted to continue to have outdoor graduations on the football field with fireworks and make it a new tradition. And so that was something that caused a lot of discussion and debate in the community about having an outdoor versus an indoor graduation. But ultimately, like we talked about, we did some surveys of our student body, our seniors, we talked to staff, and when you get a lot of input and data put in place, you'll make the best decision. So it turned out at the end of the day, some people wanted to go outside, but 75% roughly of individuals wanted to go back to the University of North Texas. So that's just one example, but at the end of the day, I think as long as you're listening to people and not making decisions by yourself or in isolation, good things can happen.
How do you prioritize competing demands on your time and resources as a superintendent?
That's another great question. How do I prioritize my time? Well, actually, if you ask me what's the one thing that I'm working on, it's probably work-life balance or work-life integration with my own family. And so I'm going to have 2 students here in Highland Park ISD. And we were talking yesterday, at least over the last 3 or 4 decades, we haven't had a superintendent here who's also a parent. And so I'm going to have 2 students next year, a 3rd and 4th grader at Higher Elementary School. And so I'll be out and about at all of the elementaries. I'll have 2 at Higher. And so really, for me, I love being out and about supporting the school district. So I will be out, I will be present, I will be listening and working with everyone. But I think for me, I've got to find that balance of also being dad and making sure that I can make it to some of my own children, their activities, their sporting events and things like that. And so, you know, everyone will probably have to keep me honest and make sure that I get over to those events. But the one thing as a family that we've done to provide that balance is they'll come along with me. And so if it's a community event or an after-school event, whether it's here at the middle school or elsewhere, you might see my 2 kids or my wife with me, and we'll all just kind of do everything together as a family while I work.
How do you ensure that all students receive a high-quality education regardless of their background or abilities?
So the one thing that I know in public education, the most important thing is what happens in the classroom. And so we've got fantastic teachers here in Highland Park ISD. So we want to make sure that we have great teachers in every single classroom. After that, the second biggest factor on student achievement is a strong campus leader. We've got great principals here. And so my job primarily is to work with the campus principals who work with the teachers. And so when you think about students specifically, I've always said we want to look at each student by skill. And so you both know that there are things that come easy to you and things that you work a little bit harder at to master. And so whatever that looks like, we want to work with our teachers to get you all there. So my job is really to remove barriers, to remove roadblocks. So as a student, if you come to school every day and there's something that you feel like needs to change, you know, my job is to help work with the teachers, work with your principal to make those things happen.
How do you foster a culture of continuous improvement and innovation with your district?
So in public education, continuous improvement is important. The one thing that I do know, so I'm brand new to Highland Park ISD, as you both know, and so no one really likes change, but everyone likes to get better. And so it's all about having an open mind and looking at, there are great things happening in Highland Park ISD that are, you know, longstanding traditions or things that we do well. And there might be some things that we can change or improve upon. But as I mentioned, it's up to all of us, working with the students, working with the teachers and staff members, and working with your parents on figuring out what those things are. At the end of the day, public education in Highland Park ISD, it should be a learning organization. It's not just the students coming to school every day to learn, but how do we as the adults also have an open mind and learn so that we can all grow and get better?
How do you balance the need for academic rigor with the social and emotional needs of your students?
So I think that's another good question. One of the things that's really important to me, I've always had, is a superintendent student advisory. And so I'll make sure I've got representatives from all 8 campuses where I'll sit down each semester and talk with each of the students about things that are going well, how we can improve. Because I know when you look specifically on wellness or, you know, all of the work that our students put in at school, we want to make sure that you're successful. And so hearing directly from you about, you know, it's funny, people say, well, students are just going to want to, you know, maybe slack off a little bit or be lazy. But when I have conversations with 8th graders, with freshmen, with 5th graders, oftentimes they'll tell me areas that we can go a little bit deeper or we can work a little bit differently, and then other areas where we can have some balance. And so I think when you think about student wellness and the whole experience of a student in school, it's important that we hear directly from you. And so I look forward to setting up my student advisory and having great conversations with students from all 8 campuses next year.
And last, is there anything else you would like to add?
Wow, the one thing that I will say, and so I've been here in Highland Park ISD for a few weeks and I get to wrap up the school year. And so Dr. Trigg is the superintendent of schools. We've been working side by side, and he'll be the superintendent of schools through graduation. And then right after graduation, I'll officially get to be the superintendent for Highland Park ISD. And the one word that I would say that really represents this community has been welcoming. And so everywhere I've gone to lots of receptions, public events, to campuses. People have reached out to me, to my wife, to my kids. You all invited me to come here today. And so I would just say thank you to the HPISD community. It's a great place to be, and we're so excited to see what the future holds.
Well, thank you for coming. We're so glad that we had the opportunity to interview you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Go Raiders.
Now back to the studio.
Hey there, I'm Dr. Mike Rockwood, and you're watching Raider Media News.